the thing is that we now at BO Systems, we try to think, how can we essentially create another platform for data integration and flexible analytics and link it very closely to DHIS2 so that people that already use DHIS2 just can see this as an extent. It's not like this kind of big new thing you have to deploy in addition. It's and standalone. It's more like an extension of DHIS2. And we like, to be very short, like we basically try to create DHIS2 for integration and flexible data exploration. Like we're taking the same approach with making it free and open source for low middle income countries. We want to build it on open and open source technologies like Postgres, Superset, ClickHouse, Redis. Like we're utilizing those like industry standard open source technologies so that we don't want to lock anyone in. Like if you one day don't want to use this, you can then continue with Superset and ClickHouse, right? So it's like we try to remain as open as possible. We can also deploy, so we have a SaaS offering where we deploy it like in the BO cloud. You can also choose to deploy on-premise, that if you have a data, regulation that says data has to live in country or on island, then we can also do it on-premise, install it in your data center. Yeah. So super quick high-level overview. So we have the kind of the moving pieces of this platform is what we call data pipelines. For pulling data in from systems, materialized views for doing data mapping, data transformation, aggregation. These can be things like moving tracker to aggregate, joining different data sources, etc. Then we have destinations, which is about taking those data and pushing it back into DHIS2 if you want to do that. We also now have workflows for job orchestration, so we can set up jobs that basically take data from data pipelines, combine it with views, and then push it back. And you can schedule the whole thing and orchestrate it to run continuously or at night or whatever you want. There's also options for like custom data quality checks. So if you wanted to run data quality checks to check for outliers and anomalies to your data or events, you can also do that. Super BI, which I guess is your main interest, where we can now embed everything back into DHIS2, even if the data is not inside DHIS2. And of course, you can also connect with any other BI tool. So I'm going to be quick here, but this is like an up and coming project. I think many countries now, after the Oslo conference, came to me and now want to run this and install it also for countries around the world. So I think it's going to be. I hope it's going to be popular in the fall and then in the next year. So, and we also use this platform internally at BO Systems. So we work with a lot of these international NGOs, and instead of building like one-off solutions, we now have a platform approach. So like we did with DHIS2, right? Instead of like creating a custom solution over there and a custom software over there, we try to make it a generic platform that many can use, and that way it's going to be stronger and stronger. So we really see this as just the beginning. So like in a year from now, this is going to be even a lot more inside this platform. So it's a growing thing. And that means also you don't have to kind of pay for everything yourself. Like everything you need to fix, you have to pay for. It's probably someone else had the same problem and then we did it for someone else. Okay. So the landing page is like what they call the data catalog. This is where you get a complete overview of all your data sets. We built connectors for all the typical software that we see in our space. And this list is, of course, growing. So, like instead of doing all this very complicated sort of ETL complex mappings and things between different systems, we now moving more into the modern data engineering world where people just have ready-made connectors, right? So instead of having to go and build, something inside Iris to push data to DHIS2 every month, like now, you can just point at the AP data pipeline to Iris, and then it will suck in all the data, and then you can manipulate the data inside the data lake in the data warehouse, and easily either visualize it inside Super BI without even installing it or ingesting it into DHIS2, or you can then use the destination to push it back in. So we support ComCare and Parquet files and CSV files and all the systems, including Kobo, Toolbox, ODK, ONA, and so on and so on. And the list is growing. So this is a very high-level data flow overview. Typically, when we go to large countries, we see that they have mini DHIS2 now. Like they created a whole bunch of them for, one tracker for HIV and TB, and one for immunization, and one for NCD, and one for antenatal, maternal health, et cetera, et cetera. NGOs love to spin up their ComCare and ODK projects, right, for all kind of stuff without much thought about integration later. There's usually like an iris that holds human resource data, and then there's some, the local EMR is there, and there's a bunch of data files. So the cool thing now we can just point these different data pipelines to these systems, and we can suck all the data in, and then we can kind of deal with the problem in a central single data warehouse, which is a much easier problem than having to build all these one-off solutions. So like when you connect to DHIS2, there's no coding needed. Like you just give it a name, description, tags, refresh schedule. Everything is very kind of UI driven, like it is when DHIS2. You can do a lot without having to go and do any coding in Python or Java or whatever. You give the URL to the username and to the URL, the username and the password. Then if you have a database connection, you provide the connection details. We can filter here by dataset, by program, by metadata. We can also filter by data element groups, origin groups, periods, last year, 2 years, different types of filters. We point to a particular schema and base table name in the warehouse. And the cool thing here is that this is like near real time. It's continuous, meaning that it's actually faster than DHIS2 itself. So that when you enter data inside DHIS2, even in another DHIS2, it will come into the system within 2 minutes, and then you can then visualize the data almost immediately in Super BI. So you don't even have to wait for the DHIS2 analytics to run. The pipelines are scalable, so it's not like the typical thing is like you want to connect Power BI, but then you have a web-based API approach, and the whole thing just crashes because it runs out of memory or something. But this is scalable. We kind of partition the data and do it in a fast way. It's actually also very dynamic and adaptive. As I said, like we can also upload arbitrary CSV files. If you have that, we can just go and click the CSV connector. We can upload large data sets in CSV, and it goes straight into the platform immediately. There's also public data sets. So if you have interest in particular public data sets that you would like to kind of enhance your visualizations and analytics, then we can also do that. If you have a catalog of data sets, we can also help you connect other systems as well. We also have access control. So if you have data in your data warehouse, then we can also do access control like we do in DHIS2 with keeping private, sharing with everyone, or sharing with selected people. So once you have the data in, we can then do what we call custom views. So now we have the ability to write views, and as you can see on the left, like all the tables and the schemas and everything is like easily accessible in the web-based SQL editor. So here is you can go and do particular filtering, joins, aggregation, and so on and so on. And you have all the tables from all the systems that you're integrating in the same kind of schema. You can go in and you can choose which tables, which schemas, which columns. We have autocomplete in the SQL editor. And then you can go and write your SQL queries. Everything is web-based. It follows the access control of your user account and so on. When you're done with that, you just save. It becomes a view in the system. We also have this custom data quality checks that we talked about. We can come back to that if that's something that's interesting. Same thing here. We can write custom checks using SQL like this. So once you're done with that, we have the destinations. So now you can either connect directly with Superset and Super BI to the warehouse. That is very interesting because now you can do flexible analytics in Tracker for tracking data, and you can do analytics on whatever data you might have in the system. But you can also then take the destinations and push data back into DHIS2. Sometimes we have tracker data, event data, other kind of baseline population data that we would like to use as denominators in DHIS2. So then now we have the ability to push it back in where it becomes available as normal data elements where we can use it in DHIS2 indicators. So you have the option of doing both here. So this is simple. Again, like UI driven, you just select which view you want to use, the URL to the DHIS2 instance, and so on and so on. When you're done with all of this stuff, we have the workflows. So the workflows is now a way to kind of combine all these things and orchestrate. So now you can select a high number, like any number of DHIS2 pipelines to pull in data from different systems. If you only have one DHIS2, that's also fine. We can even pull from one instance and push back to the same instance. And that way kind of convert, event and aggregate tracking data into aggregate data or whatever. We can also, of course, also use this to do analytics that DHIS2 cannot do, right? It is like org-unit statistics, cross-program analytics, these things. So you set up a workflow, we add a step. So the first step can be like a pipeline that fetches DHIS2 data. Then you can have other pipelines as well. Then you can have a materialized view that's, for instance, like converting aggregate data to, tracker data to aggregate data. And then we have the destination that you can then take the data and push it back into the HS2. And then, of course, this can be scheduled and run on a frequency. So you don't have to worry about, you don't have to go in and write your Python scripts and all that stuff to move data. Everything is in the platform, scheduled, monitored, audited, and so on. So it's easy to monitor and follow. Yeah. And as mentioned, you can also, of course, always go to the connection information tab and then look up your URL and then username and so on to go and connect directly to the warehouse if you want